Stress, according to Lazarus and Folkman in 1984, is a pattern of physiological states and psychological responses occurring in situations where people receive threats to their well-being which they may be unable to meet. Stress, therefore, is a response of the body to any demands made on it. According to Lazarus in 1991, stress is discussed in relation to imbalances between the demands of the situation by an individual and the perceived ability to cope or adjust to the demands of the situation. This basically means that stress is the body's reaction to a situation, which involves the performer to act and provide a response, which could either be physical, mental, or emotional. Stress can be interpreted as both a negative and positive thing. More experienced athletes see stress and use stress as a positive aspect of their performance. However, others can have their performance negatively affected. Stresses are things that cause stress, such as the opposition or a big competition. There are different types of stress. Firstly, eustress, which is a healthy type of stress and can be interpreted as a good positive aspect of stress. Eustress is a good reaction from stress and can lead to better performance and a more optimal level of arousal. Eustress can cause a performer to play better, and as an example of eustress in sporting performance is Andy Murray. This is because he was playing in the 2012 Olympic gold medal final, and thus had so much stress placed upon him, as it is such a big game. However, he used his stress and as eustress, and it enhanced his performance, and he won the final against Federer. Eustress could have led to factors such as more concentration and focus for Andy Murray, as well as an increase in challenge, motivation, and satisfaction from coping. These are all factors that can lead to a performer playing better because of eustress, which is a healthy type of stress, excelling positive aspects of their performance, like increasing their motivation so that they will try harder to win. For Nick, in this scenario, it does not show that Nick had signs of eustress, and it was more likely distress. Distress is the other type of stress, and is quite the opposite to eustress. Instead of enhanced performance, it results in an inability to not be able to meet the demands. However, it is a perception. Instead of distress being a positive type of stress, it is in fact very negative, and can cause the performer to have very negative feelings of nervousness, worry, and anxiety level is increased. Nick may have had this type of stress because his anxiety level increased before the game, as shown by him feeling nauseous. Also, during the game, it showed that he was not playing very well by missing shots. This is because he does not have eustress, but he does have distress as his performance is getting worse. There are many symptoms of stress that can be either somatic, cognitive, or behavioral. Stress is determined by the ANS, or the autonomic nervous system. If a person becomes stressed, the fight or flight response kicks in, whereby adrenaline is released by the adrenal glands, and this causes the heart rate, blood pressure to increase, pressure and breathing rate to increase. In Nick's scenario, when he goes to play the game, he may feel stressed, and adrenaline is released, causing him to have a bigger heart rate, a high heart rate, etc. The cognitive symptoms of stress is having a reduced concentration, interest, humor, self-esteem, and enthusiasm. This is cognitive symptoms of when a performer may feel stressed, and this can lead to a reduction in concentration, which may be a reason why Nick cannot hit those precise shots, and may become less accurate as he cannot concentrate so well as he's stressed, and less interested in playing the right shot. There are also other cognitive symptoms like being unable to make decisions and making mistakes, which is shown when Nick does not play as well in games compared to how he does in training. And this is why he makes mistakes which he normally does not. There are also somatic types of anxiety, like blood being diverted to the muscles, increased heart rate, blood pressure, breathing rate, heat production, metabolism, muscle tension, sweating, dilated pupils, and a release of adrenaline. Also, after the stressor is no longer there, then the peripheral nervous system kicks in for homeostasis to regain the body to a normal resting level. Nick thus may have an increased heart rate and breathing rate as he is feeling stressed. There are also other behavioral symptoms of stress, like talking, eating, and walking quickly, interrupting conversations as well. And there are also other symptoms, such as poor personal presentation, nervous habits like biting nails, or being excessively moody. And Nick is also, whilst relating this to Nick, he is also worried about his grades, even though he's a top grade student. And this is because he is stressed about failing, and thus symptoms of cognitive stress occur, i.e. worrying. There are stressor categories. Firstly, the sports environment, lifestyle factors, external and internal factors, occupational and personal life are factors too. In sports environment, the stressor is a conflict, for example, in football match. If a player gets into a fight with the opposition, this can cause stress for other players, and thus a stressor. There can also be an event importance which acts as a stressor, such as if there is a big rivalry between two teams, it can cause stress. There can also be stressors like audience frustration, pressure, competition, and physical challenges. This means if there is a big competition in badminton coming up for Nick, for example, this can cause him to be very stressed, or if there are physical challenges, it may cause stress. The internal thinking stressor can cause stress via perception of stress, or being overly critical of themselves is a stressor. This is because, for example, if a player believes they are underperforming, then this may cause them to be stressed, as they want to play better, and may even lead to frustration. There are other factors within the internal thinking that are stressors, such as a lack of sleep, illness or infections, injury, and a perception of ability that can cause stress. This is because, for example, an injury can cause stress, as a performer may feel vulnerable or worried, and thus stressed about it. The other causes of stress, like personal lifestyle, can have factors that are stressors, such as significant people, like family or friends. This can be a stressor for performers, as they may feel like they want to play well, and this adds pressure and thus stress to performers to play well. In Nick's case, a reason why he may have underperformed is because stress built up due to his family coming to watch, for example, and thus he may feel more pressured and stressed to play well. There is also stresses in personal life, such as social disapproval and isolation. Social disapproval can cause stress for performers, as they may feel not accepted and thus pressure to play well. Occupation can also cause stress, such as if you're a manager, this can cause stress and also pressure to win, sponsors, targets, or goals. Goals can cause stress as performers may feel unsure if they can reach their goal, and this can cause stress in the performer. If they have a sponsor they feel that they have to play well for, or they may lose their sponsor if they don't play well, this can cause even more stress. External factors such as environment, major life events, or negative social interactions can cause stress. However, closed sports like badminton for Nick are not really affected by the environment as much. He may be more affected by negative social interaction like people being rude to him or major life events like a close death to him, which may cause Nick to be very, very stressed. Here in the diagram you can see the stress process. The stress process was created by McGrath in 1970 and includes stages and demands. Firstly, the stress process starts with stage 1, whereby a situational demand stressor occurs. This demand can be either a positive or negative perception of the situation, either a threat or a challenge. If the performer perceives it as a threat, then it leads to distress, whereby the performer will have an increased worry, and thus leading to a decreased level of performance. Whereas if the situation was perceived as a positive challenge, then this will lead to eustress, whereby the performer will have an increased level of energy and motivation to succeed, and therefore an increased level of performance. After stage 1, this leads on to stage 2, when the perception of the demand by the athlete, which we have just talked about. Then to stage 3, when the stress experience occurs either psychological or physiologically, meaning arousal, state anxiety, muscle tension, or concentration level changes. And then it leads on to stage 4, which is the outcome, so the increased or decreased level of performance, and is a behavioural consequence. For Nick, therefore, when he plays a match, he may perceive this as a negative threat, and this can cause him to worry about it, and his shots may therefore not be as accurate or as fluent in training as they are in training, because he is much more anxious and stressed due to the pressure of the game environment. According to Weinberg and Gould in 2007, arousal is a general physiological activation, varying on a continuum from deep sleep to intense excitement. They stated that arousal is a mixture of both physiological and psychological in a person, and refers to the level of alertness, motivation, and excitement in a particular movement. This means it's the level of readiness and how prepared a performer is. Arousal includes the use of the fight or flight response, and adrenaline, and the RAS, which is the regulator of arousal levels. There are different types of sports that require different types of arousal levels. For example, high arousal level sports would be rugby, football, and boxing, whereas lower arousal sports would be shooting, archery, and long distance running. This is because to perform at an optimal level within these sports, the performer has to stay calm. For Nick, he would work optimally at a higher arousal level during badminton, so that he is more alert to the shots played by the opposition and is fully focused and prepared, as badminton can be a high intensity sport. Golf is another type of sport that requires a lower level of arousal due to the nature of the game. It requires performers to be relaxed and very high concentration levels to hit the golf ball cleanly and where they want it to land with accuracy. In the build-up to a shot, there is deep breathing, and fans and spectators have to be completely silent when the shot is taken. Whereas football, for example, there are always fans being very loud, cheering, and this can increase the arousal levels of performers to be more alert of the situations going on around them, and can lead them to play better, or in some cases worse. Here you can see in the diagram a chart showing optimal levels of arousal. The stages that are optimum performance is a medium level of arousal, and if the arousal becomes too high, then they may enter a state of stress, and then anxiety, and fear may play a part in their game. As we know, if a performer becomes anxious and stressed, then this leads to a decrease in performance. However, if a performer has very low levels of arousal, then this may mean they have a different optimal level of arousal. They may have highest level of performance at a low level of arousal. The reason for this is because they have to be very relaxed and be able to slow their breathing rate and heart rate down. The slightest jolt in their movement for a golfer may result in missing a large target area. On the other hand, in weightlifting, performers require a higher level of arousal and therefore may alter the graph so that peak performance and their optimal level of arousal is higher. This is because they need to hype themselves up and increase their level of motivation, heart rate, and lifters who have a greater level of concentration mentally with high levels of arousal means that they will be able to perform better. Here is the drive theory. The drive theory was created by Hull in 1951, and it attempts to explain arousal as a linear relationship between performance and arousal as seen in the diagram. It states that as the arousal of a performer increases from low to high, then this results in the performance of a performer increasing in accordance with the arousal. So, as arousal increases, so does the level of performance. Hull's theory is an early theory of arousal and is extremely simple. This results in many criticisms when evaluating the drive theory. Firstly, a criticism that can be made of the drive theory is that it does not explain for inexperienced performers, and the theory assumes that low arousal level means that the performance is low too. This is not always the case, as shown with archery and sports that require low levels of arousal to play, like golf, as mentioned earlier. This theory fails to explain this. The theory also fails to explain the differentiation between anxiety and arousal. This means that the theory does not show when anxiety starts to kick in, and states very high arousal causes good performance, when actually, if the arousal becomes too high, it can lead to anxiety and therefore a decreased level of performance. This may be the case for Nick, because he may be too highly anxious and not aroused, and thus is worrying and apprehensive and plays worse, hence not being able to play accurate shots on the badminton court. On the other hand, there are positives to the drive theory, such as that it is successful in explaining for true experienced athletes, and for when there are learned skills in the autonomous stage, where the dominant response is the correct one. Although the drive theory was developed even further by Zanuck in 1965. It was suggested that other people and the presence of others has the ability to increase arousal and bring out the dominant response. An increase in arousal brings out the dominant response, according to Zanuck in 1965.